Welcome to our second time of having a virtual trustee forum. As your president, I'm Deb Peters. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. And we have with us our panelists from our MDA board. We have Drs. Rhonda Hennessy, Dr. Clayton Shunk, Mike Mayhofer, and Ms. Karen Burgess. You have an agenda in front of you of different items that the board will be discussing at its board meeting next week. This is your opportunity to hear a little bit about those items before we have a chance to talk about them and truly give us, your board, some feedback for us to consider when we meet as a group next week. At the end of all of the presentations, there will be an opportunity for you to type in and ask us, the panelists, any questions, and we will get you those answers as well. It is going to be my attempt to answer those at the very end. However, feel free to type them at any point because the question may come up to you as someone is speaking, and I'll keep track of those and we'll try to handle those in an orderly manner. So let me just check and see if we have some more attendees here that have logged on. Okay, looks like we're about at the same. So next week when the board meets in Traverse City for our board meeting, it is tradition for our boards to meet together, the MDA Board of Trustees along with the IFG Board. And after attending a program by the American Society of Association Executives, I had learned along with Karen and along with our President-elect, Dr. Margaret Gingrich, that a good portion of every board meeting or a portion of every board meeting should be spent on board development. So we have gone out, we've researched, we'll be bringing in a speaker, and his name is Bill Pelusi. He's from Association Options, and there are two boards together, the IFG board and the MDA board. We'll be having a presentation over a period of several hours, looking at how to build effective boards, including elements of successful conversations, good board staff relationships, how to do conflict management, making tough decisions. And the next aspect of that is how to be a strategic board. In other words, creating the culture of learning, creating creative thinking and strategic thinking. So put that out for all of you on our forum today, that your boards will be getting together to do that. We hope to also integrate that into our culture, and perhaps maybe there'll be some things we'll be able to pass back to you, our component members, our house members as well. So as we move along into the agenda today, I'd like to introduce Dr. Mike Mayhofer, and he's going to discuss two topics for you, one being the public education campaign, as well as updates to the peer review dental care and ethics manuals. Dr. Mayhofer?
Great, well, thanks, Deb. I'm going to speak on two topics tonight. I'm going to start with the MDA's public relations campaign. This is pretty much an informational report. I'm going to go just a little bit into the history of this and then talk about what's going to happen with the report. Just as a little bit of background, as many of you know, for over 30 years, the MDA has promoted oral health education through a statewide advertising campaign. The campaign for many years consisted solely of TV and cable spots that ran throughout the state. The nearly $1 million annual campaign budget is funded through a special $295 per member assessment. Now, in more recent times, with more and more people assessing information and searching for dental care online, a shift in campaign strategy began in 2016 to move the majority of the budget from the traditional media platforms of TV and cable toward a more digital-based campaign. The goal was to help increase awareness of the campaign digitally and drive more potential patients to the MDA's Find a Dentist tool on smilemichigan.com. It has now been 2.5 years since the campaign strategy shift, and now is a good time to assess campaign performance and measure the effectiveness of the budget dedicated to that campaign. Jim Pond of our public relations firm and Jenny Armistad, our MDA marketing director, will give a presentation next weekend at the June board meeting on campaign performance and provide insight on how increasing or decreasing the campaign budget would possibly impact its effectiveness. So I guess they're going to look at the numbers and tell us whether we need to increase or decrease our budget, or if we increase or decrease our budget, what effect it might have on our campaign performance. So that's the first thing I was asked to speak, the first agenda item I was asked to speak on today. The next 3 items have to do with updates to our peer review dental care and ethics manuals. There's 3 items here, 2 of which grew out of our most recent MDA House of Delegates, and 1 which has to do with vetting campaign candidates. I'm going to start with one called unnecessary treatment first. As many of you know, at the last MDA House of Delegates, a resolution was passed by the House to change the MDA Code of Ethics, specifically 5B6 on unnecessary services. Previous to the House, that provision read, a dentist who recommends and performs unnecessary dental services or procedures is engaged in unethical conduct. With the resolution passing of the House, we changed one of the words in that provision. So now it reads, a dentist who recommends or performs unnecessary dental services or procedures is engaged in unethical conduct. Having changed that, we now have to find a way to deal with that. And so we're going to we're updating the manuals, the operating manuals for both the Committee on Peer Review Dental Care and Peer Review Ethics. The Committee on Peer Review Dental Care and Ethics discussed and agreed that these cases should first go through the Component Dental Care Committee to determine whether or not unnecessary treatment was recommended. If the local committee believes that unnecessary treatment was recommended, the case will be forwarded to the local Committee on Peer Review Ethics. Both committees have approved a flow chart to be included now in their respective manuals. Therefore, the Committee on Peer Review Dental Care is recommending that the peer review manual be updated to reflect this process, and that's now been done. So we now have a flow chart which tells us how to deal with unnecessary services. One of the other topics that is forcing us to change the manual has to do with our internal review policy. The MDA staff routinely conducts an internal review of all applicants for leadership positions, as well as appointments or endorsements to outside organizations. This review is an internal process that checks peer review action, state board action, and membership status. It is rare that there is a problem noted. However, during the most recent non-coms review of applicants, Executive Director Burgess noted that the internal review process was conducted only by staff and wasn't even referenced in our peer review manuals. This needed to be addressed as there are strict confidentiality standards necessary for peer review. Applicants for positions should also be informed that their peer review record would be checked, and the way this was to be done should be spelled out clearly in the appropriate manuals. And that's now what we've done. Both the Committee on Peer Review Ethics and the Committee on Peer Review Dental Care kind of got together, put their heads together, and came up with a process that's going to be going into the manuals. And this is the process now that both committees have agreed to, and this is the process that will be used for vetting candidates and other people. The staff will continue to conduct the initial internal review at the direction of the committees. The review will consist of all peer review, state board actions, and interpersonal communications. If the staff determines that an applicant's review is questionable, the appropriate peer review chair will appoint a subcommittee to review and discuss all factors involved to include peer review, state board actions, and interpersonal communications with MDA staff, components, and state committee. That subcommittee will have a minimum of 2 weeks from the initial internal review request to report its decision. Due to confidentiality, if the subcommittee believes that an applicant should not move forward, it will inform the appropriate staff and/or committee, but only as to whether or not the individual passed the internal review. No other information will be shared. The subcommittee will report its findings to the parent committee at its next meeting. So from now on, that's the way the vetting of candidates and other people is going to be taken care of through our peer review process. And that's going to be spelled out now for the first time. And it's going to also be recorded in our manuals. The last item I want to talk about came again out of the last MDA House of Delegates, and it has to deal with a resolution regarding felony convictions. The 2018 House of Delegates adopted the following resolution. Resolved, that any member of the Michigan Dental Association shall self-report felony convictions to the MDA Committee on Peer Review Ethics within 30 days of the final felony conviction. And be it further resolved that the MDA Board of Trustees revise the appropriate association manuals and documents. The committee has now discussed and placed the appropriate language to address this directive into the peer review ethics manual. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Mayhofer. Speaking to you next will be Dr. Shunk, and he's going to be speaking on an encrypted email endorsement, as well as another resolution that the board will be considering, the size of the 2019 ADA delegation. Dr. Shunk?
Thank you, Deb. Welcome everyone for being here. As the president has said, that I have two items to discuss, and the first item I was going to discuss is an endorsement for a company that provides encrypted emails. Most of you should know that if you send an email with patient material in it, let's say to an oral surgeon, that HIPAA rules require that that information be somewhat guarded or encrypted. So the MDA IFG Committee on Endorsed Services has looked at this issue and has reviewed several companies. And after their due diligence, they have decided that iCore Connect is a company that they feel would be a good choice for MDA members. And in the case of a endorsed services, what will happen is that the company will give the members of the MDA a break. So if this goes through, members will save 36% off the regular price. And as a bonus, a small royalty payment will go to IFG, which is a win-win for all parties concerned. So when an indoor service comes before IFG, their board votes on it, and then it will come to the MDA board, which is what we'll be discussing in a week. My next item up for discussion is the size of the ADA delegation. Michigan has 18 delegates and can send up to 18 alternates. In 2019, the ADA meeting is in San Francisco, which is an expensive site to send delegates. So in the past, we have not sent the maximum number of alternates. This year, we have budgeted for 18 delegates and 6 alternates. Our board will discuss the merits and necessities for how many alternates we will be sending to San Francisco. It is estimated that each person sent will cost a little over $4,000. So to send a full complement of delegates and alternates, it can be quite expensive. So in the past, we've kind of pared that down with not sending a full set of alternates. So we will be discussing that issue this week or next week, and we'll come to a decision. Next is the Executive Director, Ms. Karen Burgess, to speak on a policy of an executive session and minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Shunk. As he commented, I'll be talking about executive session. They're going to be considering a report. And as a little background for you all, the MDA Board of Trustees has policy in its board operating manual regarding what topics should be addressed in executive session, as well as policy related to the process for approving meeting minutes. However, there was no specific policy related to what should be included in meeting minutes or how executive session discussions should be documented, nor was there consideration of attorney-client sessions. So in addition, we also noted that the committee operating manual did not address documentation of executive session at all. So the board wanted to see those gaps addressed. So I sought out information from the American Dental Association and from other dental society executives, and also worked with the Michigan Dental Association attorney, our president, speaker, and our secretary treasurer to develop policy for our board's review. Now, some things in this new draft policy haven't changed at all. For example, the topics to be addressed in executive session. Executive session is used when we are discussing individuals, for example, when we're giving awards or endorsements, or there is confidential or proprietary information involved. So, for example, legislative strategy might be something that would be addressed in executive session. There is also no change regarding who should be included in executive session. Only the board, designated staff, and additional individuals who have been approved by the president as being pertinent to the discussion at hand. And the policy continues to require confidentiality for all who are in attendance. Now, some new provisions in the policy. The revised policy does specify that executive session should only be used when it is necessary. And if a specific topic includes both executive session material and information that could be addressed in open session, the agenda and reports will be prepared so that everything that can be discussed in open session will be discussed in open session. In addition, the revised policy specifies that we will publish resolutions approved in executive session in the open meeting minutes, unless doing so would place the MDA at risk. Going forward, the MDA will also maintain separate minutes for executive session discussions. While these will not be published, they will be maintained and may be accessed by the Board of Trustees and designated staff. There are also special provisions within the policy for attorney-client sessions. So we also took the opportunity to specify what information should go into the Board of Trustees minutes and how we should note votes for and against. The board is also considering revisions to the committee operating manual, which specifically address keeping executive session minutes from committee meetings, similar to the way that we'll be doing it for the board. And it also specifies that members of the Board of Trustees have access to committee minutes, which they must keep confidential, as the committees are advisory to the board. So that is the discussion that the board will be having. There may be additions or amendments to the policy, but the draft policy was well researched, so we'll look forward to that discussion. My other item is actually an item that's on the consent calendar, but I think it's appropriate to address it specifically because it is one of the actions that we are taking for our diversity and inclusion plan, with the goal of helping dentists better serve diverse populations. And that is the item related to Bridges Out of Poverty training. Now, you may be aware that many low-income Michigan residents now have some dental benefits and are seeking dental care. However, they may have poor dental health literacy, a low understanding of the dental office setting, or very little familiarity with dentistry itself. Similarly, dentists may not have a good understanding of the challenges that patients may face. So to help bridge that knowledge gap among MDA leadership, the Committee on Access suggested that we host a training session for our board, the committee members, and also include our lead participants. And those lead participants are the 8 people who are currently going through our leadership education and development program. Because the cost is within budget and we expect to host it at MDA headquarters, it's a very low cost or low risk program. So as a result, it has been placed on the consent calendar, although we expect that it will be bringing a lot of value to the association. So that is my presentation on my 2 items, and our next speaker will be Dr. Rhonda Hennessy. Dr. Hennessy?
Thank you, Karen. I have a couple of items that are on the consent calendar also. A couple of resolutions, 986 regarding the board operating manual. Chapter 3, specifically Board of Trustees B, administration lines 72 through 85, if you'd like to look at that. It was noted during the review of the board operating manual that the current policy did not include any mention of the fact that there may be times when a component or dental specialty group may incur fees for the use of MDA's outside counsel. For example, if a question should arise, the MDA does not already have an opinion on it, it impacts the entire membership, the MDA can seek an opinion of outside counsel. Contact must first be made through the executive director. The executive director will determine if the opinion or information is already on file in regards to the issue. If none exists, the executive director, his or her designee, or the president will contact the appropriate counsel, provide the response to the board member, component, and/or dental specialty group, along with retaining the response on file for future use. Authorization of direct communication does not necessarily imply that the costs would be covered by the MDA. The executive director will determine the situation. The board components, dental specialty groups, and outside counsel will be notified of this policy annually. Like I said, this is on the consent calendar. If anybody has any questions regarding it, it can be taken off so we can have further discussion. The other resolution that's also on the consent calendar is Resolution 985 regarding House Bill 5647. It's the expansion for use of the handheld X-ray devices. A little bit of history, it's been going on for quite a while, but in 2016, handheld units were authorized for use in nursing homes, home health care, special needs patients, and sedated patients. 2015, in response to requests from dentists, the MDA went to the Bureau of Radiography to change the use of the handheld unit in other clinical settings. The department was concerned about safety and clinical need. It was shown that the use on children in varied clinical settings could be very useful and safe. So a fifth clinical need was added in 2015. Children who, at the discretion of the provider, would not otherwise be able to receive x-rays through stationary radiographic means. So fast forward to today, this bill allows the use of handheld units of the safest and highest quality to be used in any clinic setting. The device must be approved for human use, contain backscatter shields, certified by the manufacturer, properly stored when not in use proper registration with the state. House Bill 5647 is in keeping with existing radiographic requirements, standard of care, safety, and registration in regards to radiographic equipment. Committee on Government and Insurance Affairs has discussed this and forwarded to the board and asking the board to support this bill. It is placed on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Dr. Hennessy. Those are our reports that we're bringing forward to you today. There is a Q&A button for you to type in your questions. I already see that some have typed in under the participants button under chat, so I will go there and answer that one or have our executive director answer it. However, I would ask you if you could put it in a Q&A format. I can track that a little easier to make sure they're answered, but I'll go back and forth. So, Ms. Burgess, there's a question from Dr. Sue Karen about the Bridges Out of Poverty.
Yeah, absolutely, I will. Dr. Karen is asking, the recommendation for the Committee on Access to Care had specified that the Bridges Out of Poverty training would be made available for the board, the committee, and the lead participants. And Dr. Karen's question was, would it be possible to open it up to other interested members? And I think that's excellent feedback from you, Dr. Karen, that certainly if we held it here at the MDA headquarters, there would be room for additional participants. And so we can certainly take that feedback back to the board, and the board can choose to make it more widely available rather than simply follow exactly what the committee had to say. So that might be something that we might wish to pull from the consent calendar in order to make that change. So thank you for that suggestion.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Or let me ask this another way. We're also looking for your feedback. When we say it's on the consent calendar, it's not that we're not looking to have feedback. It just implies that the report that is written and the discussion is something that has been researched through our committee structure. And if we feel that there isn't going to be a lot of discussion that's placed on there, it doesn't mean we can't bring items forward. Several other items that we're discussing today are either full-out discussions we're having or resolutions, but we're looking for, this is your opportunity to give us, your board members, some feedback and some guidance that we can take in so that we can consider all angles when we're looking at the business in front of us next week. So again, does any member on attendance today have any questions on any of the reports that were delivered for you? So the question is from Dr. Mark Johnston, and this will be for you, Clayton. What are we spending per person on the delegation to Hawaii this year? It seems to me that we should wait until after October to value the number of attendees in San Francisco.
That is a good question, Mark. The value or the cost to this year is around $5,000 per delegate and alternate. So the reason why we discuss this issue now is because we're looking at the budget, and we also want a number for the NOMCON committee. So that's why those things come up. It would be nice if we could wait and evaluate, but I think because of the budget and because of NOMCON, we need to kind of come up with a number, a fairly specific number, probably now rather than later.
Thank you, Dr. Shunk. I know that the board also considers our delegation for leadership development, our value to the ADA, the value to the MDA members, and as Dr. Shunk already alluded to, the cost that it is to send a delegate, and to make sure we can cover the cost of a delegate. Another question is, are the results from the public relation campaign going to be public along with the budget?
Yes, if what they're asking is, will we be distributing what the budget is for the public relations campaign for 2019, if that will be going to the House along with the budget for dues and expenses the way we always do, my understanding is that the answer is yes, that's included in the budget. If we are looking for the question, is the metrics associated with the public relations going to be made public? We always do document that in the minutes, and we also put it in our management report to the House. So in both questions, if I'm interpreting it correctly, it will be public for everyone to know. I hope that answers Dr. Karen's question.
Thank you, Ms. Burgess. She had typed in here the research found, so I believe the second half of your question, if I understand the question properly, that would answer. Yep, she said thank you. Great.
Yes, it is very interesting what they're going to come forward with, and I believe one of the discussion items will talk about a test that we intend to do in the third quarter, where we actually vary the amount we spend and do vary the amount we spend and see what the impact is on the outcome. So we're actually both looking historically and looking to do a test. So it should be very interesting and good information for the board in their decision making. Overall, our public awareness campaign is very effective compared to other states and also compared to the ADA campaign. So it's good to know that you're interested in that.
Are there any other questions on the topic of email endorsement, the encrypted email endorsement? Anything on the handheld dental x-ray? Any other questions on the policy for executive session and how the minutes will be recorded? And then we also heard the updates to the peer review manual on dental care and ethics. Any other questions directed there? All right. I want to thank you for your attendance this evening. I know it's a beautiful evening outside, and for not only going along the journey with us as we learned about these things in preparation for the board meeting next week, but also showing your diligence and being on here and listening, learning, and giving us your feedback so that we can take that back to the board. This is just one avenue for communicating. please know that you can communicate with any board member leading up to the next board meeting via email, phone. All of the contact information is on the MDA website. So again, thank you for your attention tonight. We thank you for your questions, and we look forward to continuing to do the really good work of the Michigan Dental Association. Have a wonderful evening.